Okay, well, welcome everybody who's coming to the Self-Worth Talks. And I'm really excited this week to have Meredith Vaish joining us. I've been following you, Meredith. Welcome for being here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been following you for the last couple of years and really think you have a great message. And what you're doing is really amazing. You can say more, but you are a clarity coach and the
Yep,
CEO of Pausebox.
that's
So maybe
correct.
you can tell us a little bit more about that and who you are.
Okay, terrific. So, yes, the clarity coach is a role I stepped into in the last 4 years. I really focus on helping women kind of step into their biggest dreams without draining themselves, and that requires a ton of clarity and how and creativity. Like, who do I want to be, and how do I get there?
Mhm.
That's sort of my wheelhouse. And then lately, in the last month or so, I've launched uh, conversations around menopause. So full living after 50 is now, I'm a host
Right.
of those conversations. So I think it's just that midlife woman who is tired of doing the old things, and the old things just aren't working anymore, like
Mhm,
really
mhm.
not working, and are looking for better resources, tools, and really to step into their possibility.
Yeah.
That those are the women I tend to work with.
It sounds so valuable. And like you could, there's so many women that need to listen and hear and be part of what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
today I wanted to talk about perfectionism, which I think fits right in with what you're doing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, one of one of my purposes in life is to there's three energies that I find come up for really successful women, and I have a passion for kind of helping us bust through them, and it's the ones I also grew up with. So it's pleasing,
Mhm.
proving, and perfectionism. So I'm happy to focus on perfectionism, and I would say all of those are really strategies for covering up this lack of self-worth. And that's kind of how I arrived at it. As my journey is as a kind of high achiever, overdoer, get it doneer. My particular default energy is kind of in the hustle area,
Mhm.
where I just keep throwing more and more of myself at a problem, because I need to prove myself, right? I need to
Mhm.
prove that I'm worthy.
Mhm.
Now, I think perfectionism has its own kind of separate quality, and that's much more of I think of it as more of a fixing quality, right? So when you're in that mode of having to do things right, and everything is perceived as a problem that needs fixing, and
Mhm.
you are in these very narrow constraints of what is, like, you're so busy wanting to look right or be seen as good. I think it just gets in the way of all self-expression. But these are the default energies that I work with all the time. This hustle. I also want to mention that there is an autopilot, and I think a lot of us have been there. I think the perfectionism can drive us into sort of an autopilot because it can be so overwhelming, the mental spinning that we get into when we're trying to figure out, like, what is the best thing, and I'm not giving myself any leeway, and I'm so self-critical. A lot of times we can just fall into that, like, well, let's just put everything on hold and just check out. And
Yeah.
so I've seen some clients who also have that perfectionist as kind of their dominant energy, and they also are kind of coasting because they're just so afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah. It reminds when you said that, it reminds me of like, when you're in your car is like stuck in some kind of a rut and the wheels just spin and spin because
Spinning.
they're not really grounding and connecting.
Yeah.
And so that people start going in, or they're in their head so much, they're not
Yes.
connecting to who they really are.
Yeah, and
They're
that's
not in
and they're
defense
not getting
mode.
traction, right? Either
Yeah.
they're afraid to even turn on the car, or they're just spinning their wheels. They're not moving, and I find the biggest what's so sad about being in that perfectionist energy is it's so depleting, and it just robs you of forward motion. And frankly, we are creative beings, and if we are not in action,
Hmm.
we're not creating. We're
Hmm.
in, I mean, we're creating by default, which is not creating.
Hmm.
So I think for the perfectionist, it's really about how can I take an action, any action, and how can I trust? And so for me, you'll find when I share my framework, there's this there's two dials, and this is not rocket science. The dials are trust, like how can I
Mhm.
really lean into trusting myself, but also
Yeah.
trusting that there's a higher plan, my inner wisdom, like there's just, it's all going to work out if I just show up in my integrity and in my authentic way.
Mhm.
So trust is something that we have to work on. And then on the vertical axis is this idea of self-honoring. And I find that when we're in perfectionist mode, we have really abandoned ourselves. Like we're at the bottom, we're in the basement.
Yeah.
We forget ourselves, we don't put ourselves on the list because we're so attuned to what the reward is, or what the acknowledgement, or the outside,
The
um,
external.
yes,
Yeah.
the external. So we're just not even on the map.
Mhm.
And what a loss for us, because it's
Mhm.
just, we are no longer able to create the lives that we love because we're so attuned to what does everyone else need, and who am I supposed to
Yeah.
be, and how can I look right.
Right.
And I had a lot of the look right. I mean, there's a lot of fear about stepping out, like especially if you have a message and you're like, not everyone's gonna love it, or I'm not gonna say it perfectly all the time, and it can hold you back. And
Mhm.
so, some of my unwinding has been, how can I just show up as I am, and then just a ton of self compassion.
Mhm.
Today was a good
Mhm.
day, maybe today wasn't a good day, but
Mhm.
can I be okay with who I am just
Yeah.
as I am right now? And then can
Mhm.
I soothe myself? So I've
Yeah.
learned a lot of soothing in this work,
Mhm.
just in my own journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's key. And there's that sense of, yeah, having to trust. A lot of the clients that I've worked with are at this place where they feel stuck, and they can't keep going anymore. They can't keep doing what they were doing for so many years. And
Yeah,
it's really scary.
super scary. I call that the when the survival skills start killing you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ironic
Yeah.
because those are the skills that kept us alive and successful and safe.
Those were your
And
superpowers, really, for so
they
long.
totally, exactly. I got promoted, I got rewarded, and then I got depleted and I got exhausted. And so the story of my company, Pausebox, was really about how after 16 years of just this intense give, go, and taking on all the, you know, kind of lone wolfing it, really, like under my own, like I'll get it done. I just burned out, and there was nothing left of me to give. My body definitely just took me right out of it. It had a repetitive stress injury that basically made the right side of my body limp, and I had no control. Like I couldn't use my arm, so it was kind of a really clear message. I love the body. The body's super, super straightforward.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, like when it starts talking to you, you just like, okay, I will pay attention. And I notice even at midlife, because I'm 52 now, um, there's less and less buffer. Like if you keep doing the stuff that is not good for you, your body's like, I used to put up with it. I used to give you a
Mhm.
second chance.
Mhm.
Now it's time to just
Mhm.
start doing start doing
Yeah.
you and start taking care of you,
Yeah.
because there's no tolerance for all this other
Yeah.
stuff that you've been doing all your
Yeah.
life.
That must have
So,
been very scary for you. Like when you came to that
oh,
place, did you like leave your job, or
yeah.
what
So,
changed
well,
then?
first I had so much shame, right? So I avoided recognizing that this was actually a call for something new. And I was like, no,
Mhm.
I can make it work. I can make it work. I don't want to let people down. I was in the middle of a huge tech project that I had sponsored. So my ego was on the line, and talk about perfectionism. I'm like, I don't want to make a mistake. And the body just made me stop. The HR department made me stop. They're like, you gotta get off your
Mhm.
keyboard.
Mhm.
You can't, you need to not check into work. Um, and then it was in that recovery process where I was actually at an acupuncture, because they assign, Stanford has a really great, support system
That's great.
for people going through these kinds of disabilities. And I was in acupuncture, and I was like, oh, the needles are going to hurt so much. And like, ooh, I was really bracing for that. And the needles were fine. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to leave you for 20 minutes. And I was like, what? And she left me in a room by myself for 20 minutes, which I had never taken any time for myself.
Oh my
I
goodness.
had never been reflective. Like I was just always like on some kind of task. So for
Yeah.
me, 20 minutes and then just the energy and the chi and all the stuff that happens with the needles. I mean, I just started getting waves of grief and waves of
Oh.
sadness and
Mhm.
like how could you have hurt yourself so much and just the grief of not listening and constantly, what a taskmaster I have been.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was so after that it was, lots of crying and lots of awareness that I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
And I can't heal in my corporate environment
Yeah.
as good as they are. I'm done with that chapter. And
Mhm.
so I took a sabbatical. I took a year off to figure out what it is I wanted to create next. And frankly, most of that time was spent in recovery of just sleeping and nourishing myself with good food
Yeah.
and taking long walks and
Mhm.
learning about intuition, which is
Mhm.
now the cornerstone of the work that I do.
Yeah.
So that was, and then at the very, 12th hour, um, pause box dropped in as a like,
It
there you
makes
go,
sense.
go figure that out. And I was like,
Oh, it's exactly what
okay,
happens. It's like that became your purpose. The
yes,
experiences we have are there for a reason, right?
exactly, yes. And so that set me up on this path. I had no idea I was ever going to coach, but what I realized is I have always been this person in the world of incredibly caring, very deep spiritually, very good at spotting patterns and where people are out of alignment. And I just fell into a coaching program during this time because I was so excited about what is a spiritual journey and how do people
Mhm.
develop
Mhm.
personally and
Yeah.
spiritually. And I got the tools, and now this kind of work, I mean, you just can't keep me away from it. I love it so much.
It brings you so much joy. You can tell. I mean, it's
So
just,
much joy. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
It's interesting that you said that this has kind of always been who you were. I think what happens is when we have this kind of crisis like this and we really stop and let who we really are come out, we see that it's been there all
The whole
along.
time, the whole time. Yeah. And I was always the wise one my friends would come to when they had a issue, and I could
Mhm.
always hold a lot of um fear and doubt, and they could just present who they are, and I was not afraid of it. I wasn't fixing them.
Yeah.
I was just really listening. And I think I didn't realize at the time that those are superb coaching skills. That was just how I was wired. So I'm,
Yeah.
at 52, I'm finally doing the work
Yeah.
that I love to do in the
Yeah.
world.
Well, I love that you're focusing on taking care of yourself also.
Yes. Well, it has to start there because, I spent 50 years not doing that. And then that led to burnout. So you can't, I mean, that is one way to access it. You can just deplete yourself so much that then you are confronted with like,
Yeah.
it's now or never. I
And then
have to do
you
something
know that you
different.
have to keep doing it.
You got to do it.
It's got
Yeah.
to be, it can't be like a one and done. It's got to be a lifestyle.
It will for sure. Yep. And I think that's also why I love this work is that, you get to prioritize your own practices, right? So every morning I come into my office, I'm doing my roller, I'm listening to my mantras, and I can't imagine a life where that I didn't start that way because it's
Mhm.
so essential to my own connection. And then there's so many goodies that drop in. Like every morning, there's just the intuition and the downloads and the insights are just, I mean, talk about creative. There
Wow.
are times where I have to actually say, okay, I don't know which idea to do. So I have to step back and really tune in because sometimes I get very clever with all my ideas. But the point is, there's so much resources that you get when you start nourishing yourself, and your body is so delighted to
Mhm.
have your
Mhm.
attention and affection. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say for the perfectionism folks, it's definitely what I notice in my clients is they're in their head, they're figuring it out. And the minute you start figuring stuff out, you have bought into kind of that problem dynamic that there's something wrong. So now you're just looking at what's wrong.
Right.
And there's just so much energetically that's distracting about that. And in my own journey of pause box, I had fixated on what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's got to be the right thing. It's got to be money. It's got, and all the hood. And I had a wise coach tell me, she's like, can you just stop problem solving for just a month? And I was like, no, not a month. She's like, well, how about a couple weeks? And I'm like, I can not try to fix this problem for 1 week. She's like, fine. For 1 week, don't fix this problem. And the next day I had this download.
It just came to you.
It's that fixing energy that I think is if you find yourself as a perfectionist trying to fix stuff, you really have to go switch the subject. Like you need to, that's where the trust comes in. Like, I'm going to trust that if I stop trying to fix it, the answer will be shown. And I'm going to go do something that brings me joy, that nourishes my soul, that gets me connected and alive and, all revved up. And in choosing that, that's when the answer will come.
It's just
not trying to analyze it.
Right. It's just not what we're taught.
Not what we're taught at all.
And people
it's so counterintuitive.
Are so afraid of that, really. I mean, I myself included, it's scary, but it's also
really scary.
Kind of freeing.
It's so freeing. And I was just in a bit of a twirl about one of my business decisions. And, there's a lot of things as an entrepreneur you're supposed to quote do. Like there's a checklist of like, if you do this, then you'll be successful. Well, part of my work is discernment of what is true for me, right? There's lots of models and techniques and all the recommendations out there, but what is my soul saying, and discerning what is true for me. So I had to make a decision not to do a thing that was supposedly guaranteed success, but it didn't line up for me. And I was like, I'm not going to go do another thing. It's just, I'm not going to do that thing. And I trusted myself. And now this would never have been the Meredith that worked at Stanford all these years ago. I would have just gotten the energy to go do everything and a little bit more. This time I was like, you know what? It's just, I feel really free without having that as an option. So let's just honor this feeling of like, well, that feels spacious and that feels like I can breathe. And so I didn't do it. And guess what? I still got the results I needed.
Wow.
So I think that's the energy work that I love to work with clients about, is this, we get ourselves into such a little rut about all the have tos, especially the perfectionist mindset. So many check boxes. Doesn't have to be that way. We actually have all the knowing here. We just need to access it and start taking those inspired actions.
Wow. That's so powerful.
Very, very simple, not easy.
No, right. I was going to say, because, being a perfectionist is it's like a long standing pattern. And it's like this underlying feeling of not being good enough and not wanting to be rejected. How do you help people to kind of reframe or shift that underlying energy with what you do?
It shows up differently for every person, but the general technique is we really identify the default energy and then the source, we call sourced energy. So the default energy is the one that you're in, which is causing all the contrast and all the pain and all the stuckness. The minute we do some work around just identifying it and really getting clear about the commitment to look for a new way. Because there's a lot of us that want to cling to these old patterns because they've helped us. I mean, they worked, but they're no longer working. So there's an awareness there. And then really the rest is about embodied feeling and really creating, what's possible. So that sense of expansiveness and who do you get to be in your most expressed state? And then they name that. And then we work on really bringing that quality into the body, into the actions. And then it's around integration, right? Because getting to that sourced place is quick, but now integrating it and not defaulting back. And then there's a lot of, like, for example, on retreat, we do many activities that are going to raise that default energy so that we can catch it and quickly, reframe it
See
and
it
then move in a
happening. Yeah.
different, yes. So
Yeah.
it's about awareness. It's
Mhm.
about constant loving on yourself. And, you cannot beat yourself up. You can't get there from there. Like, it's about, makes perfect sense. I get it. I see why this pattern's here. I get how it's serving me. And it's time. I'm
I do
going to
a
step
lot
into
of
something
inner
else.
child work with people. Do you do
Yeah.
like any of those dialogue type things? Like,
No, but I'm fascinated by the
yeah.
practice.
Well, it
I've
sounds
had
like,
it done on me and it's very effective.
well, when you talk about the self-compassion and reassuring yourself this is all going to be okay, to
Yes,
me, it's like, that young child needs to know that everything will be fine. That
100%.
I've
Yeah,
got this. I'm an adult now. I have choices.
I have choices.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was gonna say that a lot of people that I've worked with they're afraid to let that pattern go because they're
Yep.
afraid they're just gonna fall apart or like nothing's gonna get done or.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a strong one. I think that's why I share my framework with people, because the minute you can name the zones that you're in, this energy of the hustle energy, the struggle energy, and that kind of autopilot energy, those are all ways of default, and then golden zone, and you name what golden zone feels like. And so then you're starting to like, okay, put your body and mind and emotion into an awareness filter of like, how am I showing up right now? And it's all the zones are fine. They make
Yeah.
perfect sense given how our training and our conditioning and our experience. And there's always an option. How can I move from struggle into golden? How can I move from hustle into golden? And it's always these dials of how can I trust more? How can I honor myself? How can
Yeah.
I make myself right? There was an improv person who said, around creativity, she said, it's not about making the right decision, because people are like, what do I say? It's about making the decision right.
Oh, I like that.
And that, if we can live from that place of
Yeah.
how can I make how I'm feeling 100% right now,
Yeah.
even if it's anger, if it's like
Mhm.
these emotions that we're told never to have, if it's
Those bad emotions.
sadness,
Yeah.
bad emotions, like how can that be 100% right now? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I get it. I get it. And then how can we soothe ourselves like that
Mm.
child
Yeah.
and take care of and just love on ourselves? And I swear to
Mhm.
God, emotions move when you do that.
They
Otherwise, they're
do.
in resistance.
They're not
I won't
stuck.
feel that.
They flow.
They flow. And then you
Yeah.
get to move on into your golden journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you've got a couple different things going on? What have you been noticing with people that are engaging in your retreat and this new program you have going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll start with the retreat and the clients. I think I tend to work with my hustlers. They show up as kind of verge of burnout, if not total burnout.
Mhm.
And they are afraid to make a move
Oh,
because they're kind of entrained, like, well, I'll just try harder. I'll just work harder. I'll just suck it up. I'll just push it through. And so a lot of them are attracted to my work because we get to find a new um way of being
mhm.
that lets them be expressive. Now there's risk. It means something, you let something go. And so I just had a woman on retreat who she's like the next day she quit her job. I was like, wow, okay.
Wow.
Committed. She was committed. And she got another job that paid twice as much within a week. Like she just knew that she was no longer available for what she had been doing, and
Mm.
she was now open to other options. And like that, it popped in, and I thought, okay, not typical,
Wow.
not a typical experience, but that just really it spoke to her commitment.
Yeah.
It really spoke to her commitment. And in transformation, it really is about how committed are you. And if you're still waffling, like, well, sometimes I'll just this energy, like, I trust it and it's familiar, and then you're going to have kind of mixy wishy results. So it
Mhm.
really is about how can I really step into what's possible for me and 100% let my inner guidance come through, and then do what it's asking me to do. And if
Mhm.
that's a hard thing, then evidently that's part of the path.
Yeah.
And it's all good. You
It's
can't
all
fail
good.
at it. You can't fail at it. So I'll tell my
No.
perfectionist, there's no wrong choice other than maybe not listening to yourself. But
Yeah.
even that's a choice. Like even that helps you get clear. Like
Yeah.
contrast is always clarifying.
Yeah. Just paying
How much
attention,
just paying
noticing.
attention. Yeah. So that's kind of, those are my big ahas with my folks. I'm trying to think of my other, lots of little shifts around just, they get to spend money on themselves. Like I remember for me, that was like, what? I would never spend money on myself. I'd spend it on
Mhm.
everybody else.
Yeah.
But like last year I took a trip to Italy. It was a retreat and a cooking thing. And I was like, I had never, ever, ever spent, this much money on myself. And there was something like, and my family didn't blink at all. They were like, of course you should go. And I'm like, oh, but are you going to be okay? And, I won't be here. Like control freak. They're like, yes,
Yeah, go.
we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it was such talk about embodied, like it was important, to be in Italy and see how they live. I mean, that's
Oh
a great
boy.
feeling. And just knowing that I don't have to enable my children. I don't have to be controlling with my husband. Like the house will not look like what I expect it to when I come home, and that'll be okay.
That's like letting go of that perfectionism,
There
right?
you go. Yes, it's all control.
Yeah.
And letting go of control opens you up to so many resources. Like, oh, who do I get to be without all that control? I have
Mhm.
energy. I want to step out. I want to connect. I want to create.
Yeah.
Well, my life is amazing because I can let go of some of that
Right.
control.
So
Yeah.
when you trust yourself, and let go, then other people grow too. That's the beautiful thing.
100%. Yes. I think that has been very helpful for my teenage kids because,
Mhm.
who needs a controlling mother?
That's right.
Nobody. So, yeah, so they get to step into who they're becoming, and I get to just marvel at their beauty and,
Mhm. Mhm.
smarts and cleverness.
Yeah.
So I think everyone wins when we let go of the control. And I think for perfectionism, it's particularly tied down. I'm feeling like, you're bound by this, like, oh, but that could happen, or that could happen, or that could be bad, or, these fixating kind of anxiety producing. And
Mhm.
that's what needs to be released.
Mhm.
And you have to be really okay with like, what would really screwing up look like? And is that okay? Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Will I
Yeah.
die? No, I won't. Okay. I'm
Mhm.
open. I'm ready. I don't want that option, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to die if that's the option. And that gives you the trust that you really do have the resources to keep
Mhm. Mhm.
keep moving toward that bigger expression of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the retreat idea sounds amazing.
Thank you. I think I got into this because I love retreats.
Yeah.
I just love the journey that we go on in the
Mhm.
container. And it's kind of like a, price wise, my one-on-ones and my retreats are about the same price, but I feel like it's kind of delivering that much transformation in a really compact bucket.
Mhm.
So if you're kind of on the accelerated, like I really need to find a new path forward, retreats are amazing for that kind of work.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the energy quiz, just wanted to, because I've been talking
Yeah.
about my framework, and I find that just naming how you're showing up and naming those different energies, and knowing that you have a choice at any moment to either how can I trust more and what does that look like, and how can
Mhm.
I honor myself more and what does that look like. I call those remedies. So if you go to my site and take my energy quiz, you'll get that framework, and then you'll get an extra bonus guide that helps you sort of like, if I feel stuck, where do I go? And it'll give you some ideas.
That's so helpful. That's amazing. And we'll put that in the show notes so everybody can go to that and take the
Perfect.
quiz. I'm going to do it myself. I mean, I
I
think we
think you'll
all need
probably
it.
find you're pretty golden, I suspect.
I don't know about
But
that.
we flip around all the time,
I was just
and
going
in
to say
different
moment by moment,
moment by moment, and different areas. I noticed because of this menopause work I've been doing. When it came to my body, I was definitely in a struggle situation.
Mhm.
It comes to my professional life, I'm in a hustle. If it comes to maybe some of my, romantic life, I'm in autopilot. Like there's a lot of, we're very complex beings, and we show up in a lot of different ways. So it's kind
Mhm.
of helpful to say, oh, yeah, okay, I can see that in this area of my life, I'm showing up this way.
Yeah.
And it probably makes sense for me to kind of look at that and figure out how can I move that needle a little bit and move up up the dials of trust and self-honoring.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds,
Yeah.
I mean, I think our thing is to like let go of trying to be perfect, be who we are, like
Here we
really
are.
embody who we really are, and
Yeah.
with all of our complexities, and just to keep growing.
Keep growing for
Yeah.
sure. Keep golden. I say who we really are is that
Golden.
golden energy, and then we get pulled out from some of our defaults.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
stay golden,
Okay, I
stay
love
in
that.
flow and abundant and energized and expressed, and that's where all the juiciness of life comes from. And
Mhm.
then have a lot of compassion when you fall off the the golden wagon,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
you're like, okay, how do I get back on?
Just get right back up again.
Get right back up. Yep.
Well, thank you, Meredith, so much
Thanks.
for joining me
This
today.
was
And
fun. I
yeah, this was
appreciate it.
really fun. All right. Well, take care. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.